Hello, girls. It's Granddaddy. I heard you wanted a mermaid story, so I found a couple of chapter books about mermaids, and I'm going to read the first one to you today. And let me set my camera up here. I'm very excited I found these books. There are two of them that I found. There are a couple more in the series that I might find later. And I don't know if you can see the cover very well. It has kind of a reflective lettering. So it's called Misty to the Rescue. And this says Mermaid S.O.S. That's the name of the series. Mermaid S.O.S. Misty to the Rescue. We'll see whether I can read the whole book in one sitting or whether I'm going to break it up into two parts. Misty to the Rescue. Ooh, there's a map of Oceania. There's the Coral Kingdom. Coral Kingdom right there. There's fishing nets, a shipwreck, Cauldron Cliff, the giant kelp forest, the rocky islands. Let's see if we're going to go those places. Okay, this says prologue. Prologue. A prologue is something at the beginning of a book or a story that tells you some background information that's important so that you'll understand the story better. So this is the prologue. It says, meet Misty, Ellie, Sophie, Holly, Lucy, and Scarlet. See, Lucy, it's spelled L-U-C-Y, so it's a different spelling, but one of the mermaids is named Lucy. They are mermaids, sisters of the sea. Sisters, see, they're sisters, who live in the magical underwater kingdom of Coral Kingdom. The merfolk and their wise ruler, Queen Neptuna, that's their ruler, Queen Neptuna, look after the sea and all of its creatures. Coral Kingdom is protected by 6 powerful magic crystals, which give life and strength to the merfolk. Without the crystals, Coral Kingdom would not survive. Every year, the old crystals fade and have to be replaced. Queen Neptuna sends Misty and her friends, 6 special mermaids who are pure of heart, to collect the new ones from the secret crystal cave. But as they are bringing the crystals home, a storm blows the mermaids completely off course. This is no ordinary storm. It is created by Mantora, Queen Neptuna's jealous sister. Mantora wanted to rule the Coral Kingdom, and now she is bitter and full of hatred. She is determined to stop the mermaids from returning home so that she can overthrow Queen Neptuna and set up her evil Storm Kingdom instead. Luckily, the young mermaids have courage and friendship on their side. But that's not all. Their S.O.S. kits will help save them as they race to get the crystals back safely. And they never forget their mermaid pledge. Okay, see this? This is the mermaid pledge. They never forget the mermaid pledge. I'll read this to you. Maybe I'll even read it twice. It's very good. It's a pledge. So when you pledge something, that means you promise, okay? It says, we promise that we will take good care of all sea creatures everywhere. We'll never hurt and never break. We'll always give and never take. And as we fight Mantora's threat, this saying we must not forget. I'll help you and you help me, for we are sisters of the sea. I'm going to read that one more time. That's really good. That's poetry. We promise that we'll take good care of all sea creatures everywhere. We'll never hurt and never break. We'll always give and never take. And as we fight Mantora's threat, this saying we must not forget. I'll help you and you help me, for we are sisters of the sea. See, that's a pledge that you could take between yourselves as sister. For we are sisters of the sea. Okay, Misty and her friends are eager to prove that Queen Neptuna was right to trust them with the precious crystals. They're going to do everything it takes to get them home and safeguard Coral Kingdom for another year. Will Mantora win, or can the mermaids get the new crystals back in time to stop the light fading forever from the Coral Kingdom? Now we're going to find out. That was a prologue, so now we're at the actual story, and that's Misty. Misty, Chapter 1. Misty. We're here, said Misty eagerly. We're at the Crystal Cave at last. Misty, Ellie, Sophie, Holly, Lucy, and Scarlet swam slowly into the secret underwater cave that was hidden away on the borders of Coral Kingdom. Misty and her friends had come to the Crystal Cave on a special mission. They were the brightest and bravest young mermaids in all of Queen Neptuna's kingdom, and she had taken them aside to give them a very important task. Every year the 6 crystals in my throne fade and grow old, said the queen. See, those are the crystals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See, they look like diamonds. Crystals look like diamonds. Maybe diamonds are a type of crystal. I'm not sure. Anyway, those are the crystals. They go in the throne that the queen sits on. The queen says, when they fade, our magical merfolk power fades too. In 1 week, these crystals that you see will be no more. The throne was beautiful. It was at the heart of Coral Kingdom, made of shining silver and inlaid with pearls. At the top of the throne, 6 magic crystals glowed around the queen's head like stars. But the mermaids had noticed that the crystals were starting to fade. They flickered red and yellow and blue, like candle flames ready to be blown out. We need 6 new crystals, full of young strength and light, just like you mermaids, Queen Neptuna had explained. Take this key and go to the Crystal Cave to find them. They will protect Coral Kingdom for another year. I trust you with this task, my brave young sisters of the sea. Sisters of the sea. The friends had felt proud and excited as they set off. Misty guarded the golden key in the little pink pouch of her S.O.S kit. We'll find out more about the S.O.S kits later. Her S.O.S kit was tied around her waist. They had to get the new crystals home as soon as possible. Misty and her friends were so honored that Queen Neptuna had chosen them, especially for this task. They didn't want to let her down, or their families, or the rest of the merfolk. The young mermaids had swum for a whole day to reach the Crystal Cave. Wow, that's a long way off. They swam for a whole day. Misty had been singing happily along the way, but as she led the others into the underwater cavern, they all fell silent. They had arrived at last. Above the sea, the sun was beginning to set in a rosy cloud. Under the waves, the mermaids gazed in wonder at the cave's golden, glittering walls. Look, said Misty, there was a small silver door set in the wall of the cave. Misty swam toward it, gently swishing her pink tail. Then she took Queen Neptuna's key from her pouch and fitted it into the keyhole, turning it slowly before opening the door. Oh, gasped the mermaids as they gathered together and watched in amazement. Behind the door was a tiny chamber. A tiny chamber. See, there's the door, there's the chamber, and what do you think those are? They're crystals, the secret crystals. And there they are. They're all swimming around in the cave now, and there are the crystals. They're in the little room, and there are the crystals. Let's see. Let me see. Behind the door was a tiny chamber. It was no bigger than a cupboard and lined with mother of pearl. In the middle of the chamber were 6 dazzling crystals set out in a gleaming row. I have never seen anything so beautiful, breathed Misty. The crystals shone brightly, glinting with 100 colored sparkles of light. They were glowing with magical power. Aren't they wonderful? Exclaimed Ellie. And it has taken them a whole year to grow. We must look after them very carefully. These crystals are magic crystals. They actually grow. So they have grown in the last year, and now they're ready to be put into the throne. 6 crystals for the 6 sisters of the sea, murmured Lucy dreamily. They really are magical. We'll choose one each, said Misty as she turned to the others. Then let's try to sleep. It's almost nighttime. We can head for home as soon as the sun rises. We must wake up early, said Holly in a businesslike voice. It is very important to get these new crystals home before the old ones fade away at the end of the week. But it only took us a day to get here, said Scarlet. She was fixing her hair, peeping into a little mirror that she had taken from her sparkly red pouch. We have 6 whole days to get back. I still think we shouldn't stay here too long, replied Misty firmly. It is a big responsibility to be the crystal keepers on our journey home, and if we get back quickly, maybe the Queen will trust us with other tasks. You're right, agreed Ellie. We shouldn't risk being late. And if the new crystals aren't set in Queen Neptuna's throne before the old ones have faded, the power of the merfolk will fade too. Then it will be impossible to protect the sea and our kingdom from harm, said Misty in a serious voice. That would be awful, shuddered Lucy. We'll collect the crystals, said Sophie cheerfully. You pick the first one, Misty. But before she could, Scarlet pushed in. I want to be the first, she said bossily. Bossily, that's a good word. That means she's being bossy. She's trying to tell other people what to do. I want to be the first, Scarlet said bossily. Honestly, Scarlet, said Sophie, does it matter who goes first? Scarlet ignored Sophie and sulkily tossed her long hair over her shoulders. With a flick of her sparkling red tail and a swirl of her pearly bubbles, she swam over to the 6 crystals. She quickly picked up the crystal that was nearest to her. Queen Neptuna said that the first crystal is to protect the fish and the sea creatures, Scarlet said. I want to choose that one. Then she tucked it away in her crimson pouch. That must be their S.O.S. pouch. See this? Crimson pouch. This isn't in color, but if this were in color, that little pouch there that she wears on her belt, that's her S.O.S. pouch. It's supposed to be crimson. Crimson is sort of red. Crimson. Okay. One by one, the other mermaids did the same. As they picked them up, the crystals felt full of power and energy. Their magic was very strong. I choose the second crystal to protect the whales and the dolphins, said Sophie. She put it in her orange pouch, which matched her bright tail. I choose the third crystal to protect the seabirds, said Ellie, hiding it in her purple pouch. I choose the fourth crystal to protect the sea plants, said Holly. Away it went into her yellow pouch. I choose the fifth crystal to protect the merfolk who care for them all, said Misty. She admired its sparkling colors before putting it carefully away. There was only one crystal left. And I choose the sixth crystal to protect the humans who come to the sea, said Lucy softly. Who wants to protect the humans? Muttered Sophie. Aren't they always causing trouble? The humans are part of Mother Nature's world too, Sophie, Lucy said quietly. She gently placed the sixth crystal in her pale green pouch. So Lucy has a pale green pouch. As she did so, a rainbow of light poured out of the tiny chamber. As the mermaids left the little room, the door swung closed and was sealed by magic. Misty carefully put the golden key into her pink pouch next to her crystal. There, she said solemnly, we are now the crystal keepers, and it's time for us to get them home safely. But just then, a terrible thing happened. Oh no, what is this? A terrible thing happened. The mermaid heard the sound of horrible, menacing laughter behind them at the entrance of the cave. A cruel voice called out, powers of the dark storm, arise now for me. Oh no, gasped Misty, it's Mantora. The mermaids were suddenly thrown into a dark, swirling whirlpool. It sucked them out of the crystal cave and into the open sea. Be careful, everyone, Holly cried out. Keep hold of your crystals. Let's stay together, called Misty urgently. She tried to grab onto Ellie's and Lucy's hands, but it was too late. Misty was slipping away from her friends as the whirlpool turned into a twisting storm. She heard Scarlet scream, then Misty was lifted right out of the water and hurled through a dark and cloudy sky. The glowing sunset had been transformed into an angry blaze of red, burning like a fierce fire over the sea. Oh no, Mantora's brought a big storm and it separated the mermaids. Misty seemed to be blown away for miles, far across the wide ocean, all through the black night. The force of the wind was too strong for her to fight against. Where was she going, and when would it end? Whew. Wow, that was an exciting first chapter. I got to take a drink here. Here, I'm drinking my water here. I'm recording this in the afternoon, so I'm not drinking coffee now. I'm drinking water. Oh, Chapter 2. This is a very exciting book. Chapter 2. At last, the unnatural storm died down. The clear morning sun began to light up the sky. The wind suddenly stopped, and Misty tumbled back into the sea with a splash. What a relief it was to be out of the howling storm. As Misty plunged deep under the waves, she wondered anxiously where she could be. But she was certain of one thing. She was sure that the evil mermaid Mantora had conjured up the storm with her dark magic power. That's the evil sister Mantora. Mantora was so jealous of her sister, Queen Neptuna, that she had vowed to overthrow Coral Kingdom and set up her own Storm Kingdom in its place. She wanted to rule the seas herself as a cruel queen, helped by her army of wicked jellyfish with their poisonous stings and her hideous monsters from the deepest, darkest places of the ocean. Misty knew that Mantora would not want the mermaids to get the new crystals home safely. Perhaps this storm had been part of her selfish plan to delay them in their task. Misty studied herself in the water with her gleaming pink tail and looked around. A dim early morning light made the water glow faintly. She saw that the storm had sent her to a very strange place, and she had no idea where the other mermaids were. As Misty swam down deeper, she began to see tall, dark fronds of thick seaweed growing up like trees from the seabed. This doesn't look anything like Coral Kingdom, Misty whispered. She gazed at the peculiar plants all around her and sat on a rock to think. This tall seaweed doesn't grow at home. Misty couldn't help feeling frightened as she started to wonder where the others could be. Here she is. She's sitting there. It looks like she's sitting on a big crab. And there's all this seaweed, and that they don't have that big seaweed where she's from, so in Oceania. So she's kind of worried. She's not in the kingdom of coral anymore. Uh, she started to wonder where she could be, but just then she noticed she was sitting on something hard and sharp. Ouch! She squealed. Something had pinched her. Misty flicked her tail out of the way and peered down. A huge, grumpy-looking king crab was staring down at her. Here we are. There's a king crab. Maybe it's Sebastian's uncle. It's a big one. What do you think you're doing, sitting on me like that? The crab shouted. He snapped his big claws at Misty angrily. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Crab, she said quickly. Grab? He said. Grab, he thought she said Mr. Grab. Grab, he said. He was a bit deaf. My name is not Grab, it's Cato, and it's not nice to be woken by a mermaid landing on my shell. No, I can see that, said Misty. I'm very sorry. The old crab grumbled on, but Misty was too upset to listen. She had to find her friends and the way back home to Coral Kingdom as quickly as possible. Queen Neptuna would be waiting. And our parents will be anxious if we are late getting home, she thought. I just hope we can get back before they are too worried. But I have no idea which direction is home. I wonder where I should look for the others. Perhaps this crab has seen them. The grumpy old crab was still fussing about his shell. There doesn't seem to be any damage done, he was saying, but you must learn to look before you leap. I didn't leap, said Misty indignantly. I set on you by accident. Humph, I'm going back to sleep, he replied. Do not disturb. He crawled under a big frond of seaweed and disappeared. Well, I don't think it will be any good asking him to help me find my friends, thought Misty. I'll just have to see what I can discover for myself. She set off through the gently moving forest. This is a forest of seaweed. It seemed very peaceful as Misty glided in and out of the tall strands of seaweed. Brightly colored starfish shone like little jewels. Sea snails crawled over the waving fronds, but there were no mermaids anywhere. I'll have to make the mermaid call, Misty said to herself. The mermaid call. The mermaid call was very unusual and very special. It was hard to get right, but all of the sisters of the sea had learned how to make it. And if any mermaid heard the call, she had to answer right away. Misty cupped her hands around her mouth and began blowing gently. A soft, echoing noise whispered through the waters. She waited anxiously. Would any of her friends reply, she wondered? Or was she alone in this strange place? Misty was beginning to get really worried when at last a sweet answering note floated back to her. That's Ellie's call, she said. Misty darted around quickly toward the pretty sound, then caught a glimpse of Ellie's long brown curls and silky purple tail behind a large seaweed frond. Ellie didn't notice Misty because she was checking that her crystal was still safely in her pouch. Oh, Ellie, is it really you? Called Misty. Ellie looked up joyfully. Thank goodness you're here, Misty, she cried. I've been so scared. Let's try to find the others. Soon the water around them echoed with their beautiful calls. One by one, Holly, Lucy, and Sophie emerged from the strange seaweed and swam toward Misty and Ellie, looking confused but relieved. They all hugged one another and smiled thankfully. But then they had serious matters to talk about. What do you think made that terrible storm that blew us here, Misty? Asked Lucy with big wondering eyes. I'm sure it was Mantora, said Misty solemnly. She must be trying to stop us from taking the crystals home to protect Coral Kingdom. You know how she hates Queen Neptuna and wants to take the kingdom from her. Yes, agreed Holly. Mantora wants to ruin everything that Mother Nature made and that Queen Neptuna protects because she is so jealous. Well, we're not going to let Mantora get away with this, said Misty. In a determined voice, we're going to prove to everyone, including Mantora, that we can get these crystals home safely. If we stick together, we can come up with a plan. Let's swim to the surface. Perhaps we'll be able to figure out where we are. Good idea, said Sophie. Let's swim as fast as we can. But we can't, said Lucy timidly. Why not? Asked Misty. Because of Scarlet, Lucy replied. Misty looked at the others with a horrified expression. They had been so worried about Mantora that they hadn't noticed that Scarlet wasn't there. Oh, how awful, Misty exclaimed. We must find her right away. Oof, that's the end of that chapter, I think. Oh, yeah, now we're up to chapter 3. Another drink of water. Okay, I think we're about halfway through, but I'm going to go ahead and read the rest of this book. I might stop here and read the rest later, but it's too exciting. I can't stop here. I know you girls agree. You don't want me to stop here, do you? Okay, here we go. Chapter 3. Misty and her friends quickly made the mermaid call together, but there was no reply. That's odd, said Misty. Scarlet would call back if she could hear us. Perhaps she's still in the crystal cave, suggested Holly. She might have escaped Mantora's storm. No, I don't think so, Holly, Misty replied. I heard Scarlet cry out when the storm began. She must be here too. But why isn't she answering? Puzzled Ellie. And where is she? Added Sophie. The mermaids swam slowly through the grove of seaweed, searching for their friend. Does anyone know what these huge plants are? Asked Misty as she struggled through a thick, tangled patch. It looks like kelp. Kelp, that's the name of an underwater plant. It looks like kelp, said Holly, examining it closely with a knowledgeable air. I've read about this in Queen Neptuna's sea scrolls. And my mom sometimes uses it in her healing potions. Holly's mom was a healer. That's kind of like a doctor. She was a healer back home in Coral Kingdom. Holly was very smart and loved to help her mom as she went about her important work. Then maybe we're in the giant kelp forest, suggested Lucy. My grandma told me about the kelp forests. She visited them when she was a young mermaid, just like us. I think you're right, agreed Holly. That's what it must be. So who lives here? Asked Sophie. I hope we'll meet some dolphins. Sophie's special friends were the dolphins and whales and the great swimmers of the seas. Let's look back at the map and see where the giant kelp forest is. Here we are. Coral Kingdom is over here. Cauldron Cliff, fishing nets, rocky islands, the giant kelp forest. Okay, so they're quite a ways away. Kelp forest over here, Coral Kingdom here. That's the map. Okay, so they're looking for the dolphins and whales. I don't know about dolphins, smiled Holly, but the forest is home to many sea creatures. I saw some sea dragons and starfish when I was looking for the rest of you. And I saw all sorts of urchins and crabs and octopuses, said Ellie. There might even be seahorses in a place like this, said Lucy with starry eyes. We need to find Scarlet before we can enjoy meeting other creatures, said Misty anxiously. I'm worried about her. She must be really frightened all on her own. I bet she's asleep or something. That's Scarlet. You could tell from what we've heard about Scarlet so far. She's the one that's not the good team player. She wanted to pick her crystal first. So let's find out where Scarlet is. Okay, poor Scarlet. I wonder where she can be, added Ellie. And how can we find her? "It's so dark and tangled here," replied Holly thoughtfully, "that I think we must be deep in the heart of the forest. Scarlet can't be near because she didn't answer our call. Why don't we swim toward the edge of the forest? It will be lighter there and easier to look for Scarlet." Misty and the others agreed that this was a good plan. The mermaids glided through the thick tree-like stems. As they weaved their way through the dense seaweed, the paths began to get wider and it started to get lighter. They felt relieved. Now they were sure they were getting closer to the edge of the forest. "Let's make the mermaid call again," said Sophie. This time they made their notes last longer, like sweet, clear bells. And after a while, they were getting a very faint reply. "Scarlet," said Ellie. "Thank goodness." "I think she's over there," cried Misty, pointing at a particularly thick clump of kelp. They found Scarlet looking very angry. Her long hair had attached itself to the branching fronds, and she was completely stuck. Oh, her hair got tangled up with the kelp. Is that Scarlet? Yeah, that's Scarlet. See, her hair is tangled around the kelp. "What are all you staring at?" she snapped. "Get me out of here." Misty and Sophie quickly took hold of Scarlet's hands and tried to pull her free. "Ow! Not like that," Scarlet yelped. "You're pulling my hair out." "Sorry, Scarlet," they said, "but how can we get you free? Your hair is tied to the kelp." "Maybe I can help," Lucy said shyly as she rippled her emerald green tail and swam over to Scarlet. "I've got a comb in my S.O.S kit." She opened the shiny green pouch that was tied around her waist on a little belt. Each mermaid's S.O.S kit contained a lot of special things. They never knew what they might need to help a sea creature in an emergency. Lucy gently moved her crystal to one side and took out her mermaid comb. It was carved from mother of pearl and set with pretty green stones. "My grandma gave this to me," she said. "She told me it's a magic comb that never hurts. I'll try to be gentle." Lucy started to comb Scarlet's silky hair, carefully untangling each strand from the seaweed. As she worked, Lucy began to sing. The others swam in a circle around Scarlet in a graceful mermaid dance. They all took turns combing her hair, singing together like a chorus of sweet seabirds. Okay, here's the song they're singing. "Oh, mermaid, dear mermaid, you're combing your hair. Your tail is like pearl and your face is so fair. Oh, mermaid, dear mermaid, sing your song to me. Your hair will flow free like the beautiful sea." I'm going to try that again. "Oh, mermaid, dear mermaid, you're combing your hair. Your tail is like pearl, and your face is so fair. Oh, mermaid, dear mermaid, sing your song to me, and your hair will flow free like the beautiful sea." At last the job was done. "I hope I didn't hurt you, Scarlet," said Lucy. "You all nearly pulled me apart," grumbled Scarlet. She's a real grumbler. She took a little mirror from her pouch and fussed over her hair. "That's not very grateful, Scarlet," said Sophie sharply. "Well, let's not fight," interrupted Misty. "Queen Neptuna wouldn't want us to do that. Remember that we need to work as a team." Sophie and Scarlet murmured sorry to each other, and Misty breathed a sigh of relief. "Let's swim straight to the surface," she said. "Then we can think about how to get the crystals home safely. We all know that some of the merfolk thought we were going to be too young for this task. We have to prove to them that Queen Neptuna was right to trust us." "I really don't think you'll be able to do that, Misty," Scarlet said in a rather snooty voice. All the other mermaids stared at her. "What do you mean?" asked Ellie. "Look," Scarlet said, pointing dramatically. Misty has lost her pouch with her crystal in it. Everyone gasped. Misty quickly looked down to where her pink pouch had been tied around her waist by a little sparkly belt, but the belt and the pouch were gone. Oh, what a disaster. Poor Misty. Poor Misty. Chapter 4. But, stammered Misty, looking around wildly at her friends' puzzled faces. I had my pouch with me in the crystal cave. I remember putting my crystal into it. I don't understand. Misty felt so embarrassed. How could she have been so careless? Perhaps it fell off when we were helping Scarlet, suggested Holly. The mermaid started to search the grove of seaweed where Scarlet had been stuck. But suddenly Misty gasped. Oh dear! Her pretty face went very white. What is it, Misty? Asked Ellie. Have you thought of something? Yes, said Misty in a very small voice. Something that I was going to do, but I didn't. What do you mean, Misty? Said Sophie. You're not making sense. Well, Misty continued, when I was getting ready to go to the crystal cave, I tied my pouch into its belt around my waist. Then I noticed that the fastener on the belt was loose. I told myself that I should fix it right away. But first, I wanted to say goodbye to my little sister, Dusty. And then, I'm so sorry, but I forgot to fix it. Misty's cheeks blushed bright pink. Oh, she forgot to tighten up her belt. Tut, tut, said Scarlet. That was a very big mistake, Misty. Very careless. Yeah, see, Scarlet's not very helpful. She's just making Misty feel bad. See, I think Scarlet's the example of what friends and good mermaids should not do. She's a sister of the sea, but she's not being very nice to her sister. I know, said Misty miserably, and the belt must have come undone when I crashed into the sea again after the storm. So maybe the crab has it. After the storm. So your crystal was in your pouch was on the belt, and the belt has fallen into the sea, Scarlet said. Well, you've really let us down, Misty. What will Queen Neptuna say? Tears of shame filled Misty's eyes. Scarlet, said Ellie reproachfully. Reproachfully, that means she's criticizing her. Misty is very strong. Misty is very sorry. She made a mistake, but it can't be helped. It's no use rubbing it in. But she'll never find her crystal again, said Scarlet angrily. It's lost in the giant kelp forest, and now we'll never get the 6 new crystals home in time. The old crystals will fade, and our merfolk power will die, and Mentora will destroy our home. Misty stopped crying and looked up. Oh, no, she won't, she said in a determined voice. I promised Queen Neptuna that I would bring my crystal home safely, and I will, if it's the last thing I do. We'll help you, Misty, said Ellie eagerly. We're a team, after all, like you said. Do you really mean it? Asked Misty. Of course we will, said the others, but Scarlet still looked annoyed. The first thing we need is a plan, said Holly. Misty, can you remember anything about where you landed after the storm? Okay, what do we remember about where she landed? She landed on the crab. I saw lots of starfish, Misty said hopefully. Holly shook her head. That's no good, she replied. There are hundreds of starfish all over the forest. Can you remember anything else? Misty thought hard. So much seemed to have happened to her in the last 2 days. She desperately tried to remember what had happened when she arrived in the kelp forest. But then something flashed into her mind. Oh, of course, a grumpy crab pinched my tail, she exclaimed. He was called, what was it? K something. Caleb? Suggested Ellie helpfully. No, wait, I know. It's, Misty said it's Cato. His name was Cato. Then we've got to find this Cato right away, said Holly. He's the only way we can track down the spot where the original crystal might be. Misty and her friends turned back the way they had come through the waving underwater thickets. They called Cato's name as they swam along. He was a bit deaf, said Misty. We better shout loudly. The mermaids' voices rang through the tall avenues of seaweed. Tiny purple fish peeped at them as they glided past, but no one answered their cries. Oh, this is hopeless, said Scarlet. We can't give up yet, said Sophie. Let's try just one more time. 1, 2, 3. Cato! They're calling his name. Cato! Suddenly, a giant cuttlefish poked out from behind a big piece of kelp. He waved his yellow tentacles at them. All right, he said. I heard you the first time, and the second, and the third. He sounded angry, but his big eyes looked kind. What's the matter, mermaids? We have a terrible problem, began Misty, swimming to the front of the group and facing the cuttlefish bravely. Well, there's a solution for every problem. That's my motto, replied the cuttlefish. That's what the cuttlefish looks like, kind of a squid. There's a solution for every problem. Not for this problem, said Misty sadly, unless you know someone called Cato. Know him, he said. Old Cato's been my special friend since we were hatched. We used to play hide and seek as youngsters in the forest, but that was a long time ago. Now we're both sleepy old fellows. That's how it all started, said Misty. He was asleep, and I sat on him. Sat on him, exclaimed this cuttlefish. That's no way to say hello to an old crab like Cato. I didn't mean to, said Misty. It's just that there was a terrible storm. Storm? What storm? There hasn't been any storm down here in the forest as far as I know. The old cuttlefish looked very puzzled. It wasn't a storm from Mother Nature, Misty explained. It was Mantora blowing us far away from our home in the Coral Kingdom. Mantora? Not that wicked old creature up to her tricks again. Well, said this cuttlefish, eyeing his friends carefully. This is a strange tale. Mermaids all the way from Coral Kingdom, unnatural storms, and now Mantora. I think you had better tell me everything that has happened from the beginning. And, by the way, he said with a smile, you can call me Felix. Okay, I think we may only have 1 or 2 chapters left. We're on page 69. I haven't been telling you the page numbers. That's page 68. 68. This is page 69. Okay, chapter 5. It says chapter 5. Better get a drink of water. Water. Here we go. Chapter 5. Misty poured out the whole story to the kind old cuttlefish. As she spoke, she swam restlessly back and forth to help her think better. So, do you see, Mr. Felix, she pleaded, that I desperately need to find your friend Cato. I must ask him if he has seen my pouch with the crystal in it. Well, there's only one thing to do, said Felix, as he slowly unfurled his tentacles to push himself through the water. We must pay a visit to Cato. The young mermaids followed him eagerly, weaving in and out of the forest and rippling their glistening tails. Felix puffed clumsily ahead of them. The comical cuttlefish seemed to know all the shortcuts in the mysterious seaweed groves, and the mermaids started to feel a bit more hopeful. Soon, Felix nudged aside some thick strands of purple kelp. There, resting in the water, was a king crab who had pinched Misty's tail. Wake up, Cato, old friend, said Felix. He gently tapped the sleeping crab with his tentacles. The crab opened one eye. Oh, dear, Mr. Cato, said Misty breathlessly. I am really sorry that I woke you up by sitting on your shell. Please forgive me. Cato peered at Felix and then at Misty. He seemed very confused and drowsy. You see, Mr. Cato, Misty explained, I am in terrible trouble. I made a big mistake, and I lost my little pink pouch. That might not sound very important, but inside the pouch was a magic crystal, and Queen Neptuna needs the crystal to fight Mantora to protect the sea creatures. Protect the sea creatures, eh? Cato muttered, stretching himself and waking up from his nap. That sounds like a better idea than landing on someone's shell. I've got to rescue that pink pouch, said Misty. I need to know whether you saw it when I bumped into you. Did you notice it floating away after I left? What's that? Said Cato. An ink couch. An ink couch. He was really a bit deaf. No, shouted Mermaids. A pink pouch. Not an ink couch. A pink pouch. No need to shout, he huffed. Can hear perfectly well, don't you know? As a matter of fact, I did see one. A silly sort of thing, I thought. Couldn't eat it, so I gave it to some giddy little seahorses. Have a nice day. He gave it to some seahorses. That's a seahorse. It's a kind of fish that looks like a horse, but it's not really a horse. Have a nice day. Felix waved the mermaids away from the tired old crab. The purple kelp closed around Cato, and he fell back into a deep sleep. Oh, now they have to find the seahorses. There are the seahorses. Now, all we've got to do, exclaimed Misty, is to find those seahorses. Felix led the way toward the edge of the forest. The kelp began to thin out. Gleaming blue and yellow fish looked up from nibbling the seaweed, wondering what 6 young mermaids were doing there. The sunlight shone down from the overwater world, and at last Misty and her friends saw the seahorses. They had curly tails and arching necks and the sweetest faces. Aren't they beautiful? Breathed Lucy. And look, said Misty excitedly, pointing at a father seahorse and his young family. They're playing with my pouch. I think that's the pouch. They're using it to, that's the belt and that's the pouch. They're using it to pull the baby seahorse around. The bigger seahorses were holding the ends of Misty's belt and pulling the baby along. He was sitting in the pouch as if it were a carriage and squealing with excitement. He's so adorable, said Ellie. Oh dear, said Misty in a worried voice. I wonder if the seahorses will be upset about giving it back, and I do hope that the crystal hasn't fallen out to the bottom of the sea. That would be awful. Well, there's only one way to find out. Chapter 6. I think this is the last chapter. We're almost going to find out if they rescue the crystal. Felix told the mermaids to wait quietly while he talked to the father seahorse. Then he beckoned Misty and her friends over to be introduced. This is Dash, the seahorse, said Felix, and this is his family. I've explained why this pouch is so important to you and to all of us sea creatures. Of course they will give it back to you. Misty took the pouch gratefully and plunged her hand into it. The crystal was nestling safely at the bottom, and so was the golden key to the crystal cave. Oh, I'd forgotten about the golden key. What a relief! Misty tied the broken ends of the belt firmly around her waist. She was never going to make the mistake of losing her crystal again. Thank you so much, said Dash. How can I ever repay you? It is an honor, he replied, to help the mermaids who protect our seas. But Misty noticed that the baby seahorse looked very sad. She couldn't understand why he couldn't play with the pouch anymore. Oh, there's a baby seahorse. And I don't know if you can see this. There's a little tear in the baby seahorse's eye. Poor thing. Maybe they'll do something to make him feel better. But I don't know what they'll do. The poor little thing, Misty whispered to the others. We must do something for him. The mermaids went into a little huddle. That means they formed a little group to talk to each other. They went into a little huddle. Then they all smiled at the baby seahorse and said, Please accept these small gifts in return for Misty's pouch and crystal. They had all taken a trinket from their S.O.S kits. There was a rattle made of bright red shells and a piece of polished mother of pearl. Best of all, Misty gave him a twisty shell that blew a sweet note like a mermaid's song. The baby, whose name was Squeak, tossed his little head and rushed around in a circle. Tanku, Tanku. He's trying to say thank you, but he's a baby, so he can't really talk. Tanku, he squeaked happily. The mermaids laughed, but just then they heard an ugly, throbbing noise coming from the surface of the sea. The cutter boat! The cutter boat, cried the seahorses. Everyone hide! They all dived down in panic and hid under the rocks on the seabed. Follow me, mermaids, shouted Felix. Quickly! Soon Felix and the mermaids were hiding as well. The noise grew louder. What's happening? Asked Misty. Well, mermaids, sighed Felix, we have some problems of our own here in the forest. My friend Cato is too old and sleepy to notice, but things are changing around here. You see, the humans have started to cut down the kelp forest. Cut it down, cried Misty. That's so terrible. But what about all you creatures who live here? Asked Ellie. What will happen to you if the forest is destroyed? We will have nowhere to live, replied Felix sadly. Oh, I don't mind the humans taking some of the kelp. They use it for food and all sorts of things. But there's plenty for everyone if we're all sensible. But Mentora always stirs up trouble. Mentora? Chorused the mermaids. What has she got to do with this? Mentora uses her mermaid magic in bad ways, explained Felix. She wants to make everything as ugly as her own dark heart. She wants to make everything as ugly as her own dark heart because she feels it makes her more powerful. She likes to play tricks on the humans so that they really don't think about what they do. They don't mean to be bad, but they're becoming careless and thoughtless. So they come and chop down great chunks of the forest, but they don't give it a chance to grow back before they come back for more. And that leaves us with a problem. We're in danger of losing our homes. But you said there was a solution for every problem, said Misty. Not when Mentora and humans are involved, said Felix. He shook his head in despair. But isn't there anything we can do to rescue the forest? Worried Misty. You and your seahorse friends have helped me so much, Felix. I wish we could do something for you. The noise of the boat's engines throbbed above their heads. The cutting of the kelp would soon begin. The little seahorses trembled with fear. Think, everyone, think, urged Sophie. The mermaids frowned with concentration. Then Misty looked up. I've got an idea, she exclaimed. That's Felix right there. Felix the cuttlefish, and that's Misty. Misty has an idea. There's a boat, and it's cutting the kelp forest, but they're going to try to help. Follow me as quickly as you can. She flicked her bright tail and sped swiftly toward the surface. But it will be dangerous near the boat, protested Scarlet, darting after her. That's Scarlet. She's always finding problems. What are you going to do? What are mermaids famous for? Called Misty over her shoulder. Singing. All the mermaids loved to sing, but Misty loved it most of all. One day, she hoped to sing for Queen Neptuna at the Great Sea Festival, which was held every year in Coral Kingdom. But now, she was going to sing with all her strength to help her new friends. Of course, said Holly, mermaid singing can persuade humans to do anything. What a brilliant idea. Oh, I see. So it's kind of magic when mermaids sing to humans. They're going to sing and persuade them not to cut the kelp forest. Come on, said Sophie, surging forward with a powerful flick of her orange tail. Everyone, follow Misty. The mermaids quickly reached the surface. They could see the menacing boat coming to cut down part of the forest. We have to split up now, Misty called to the others. Then we can create a mermaid circle around the boat. There's the boat, and there's one of the mermaids. That's Misty, maybe. There's the voice. Ah. Circle. The mermaid circle will make our singing even more powerful. Are you ready, Mermaid S.O.S? Mermaid S.O.S, they all cried and plunged away in different directions as fast as they could. Soon the mermaids had surrounded the boat in a wide circle. Then they started to sing. You happy sailors on the sea, stop your work and listen to me. You don't want to sail today. Turn your boat and go away. Listen to our mermaid song. Don't do things you know are wrong. The forest creatures need your help, so don't chop down their lovely kelp. I think that's it. I'm going to read that song again. You happy sailors of the sea, stop your work and listen to me. You don't want to sail today. Turn your boat and sail away. Listen to our mermaid song. Don't do things you know are wrong. The forest creatures need your help, so don't chop down their lovely kelp. See if the humans listen to them. Little by little, the boat changed its course. Then it started to head back to the distant harbor. Misty's plan had worked. The captain and crew would go home and tell a muddled story about running out of fuel or not liking the look of the weather, and the kelp forest would be safe. Once the sailors had been enchanted by the mermaid's circle of singing, they would never be able to find that spot in the sea again. Hooray, cried Misty. At least this time Mantora's nasty plans have been stopped. That was great singing, Scarlet. Well, she replied with the faintest of smiles, I'm just doing my part as part of the S.O.S. team. And you've got your crystal back, Misty, said Sophie happily. I knew you would get it. Ellie quickly squeezed Misty's hand. I think Queen Neptuna would be proud of you, she said. Well, I did manage to fix my mistake, said Misty with a relieved grin. And rescue the forest, said Holly. We all did that, said Misty. We really are a team. Let's go back and tell everyone that they're safe now. The mermaids all dived in an arc like a rainbow, speeding down through the water to their friends. The sea creatures were so happy when they heard the good news. The sea dragons, octopuses, and spiny urchins who lived in the forest came to thank the mermaids. Squeak, that's the baby seahorse, kissed them with tiny baby kisses. But Cato, what do you think Cato did? Cato did nothing because Cato was still fast asleep. It was time for Misty and her friends to set off for their journey home. Queen Neptuna would be waiting anxiously for them and for their magic crystals. Mantora's storm sent you far from the Coral Kingdom, said Felix. We will guide you out of the forest and on your way. Then you need to travel to the west. He's giving him directions. We will guide you out of the forest and on your way. Then you will need to travel to the west. Always follow the setting sun, because the sun sets in the west. But look out for Mantora. You never know when she might strike again. Be careful, brave mermaids. Be careful, said Squeak, because he can't really talk well. We will, replied the mermaids. They swam with their friends through the last rows of purple kelp until they saw the open sea ahead. Looking over their shoulders, they had one final glimpse of the dark, mysterious forest, its seaweed fronds swaying gently in the water. The mermaids were so happy that they had been able to save it from destruction. Goodbye, Dash, they called. Goodbye, little Squeak, and goodbye, dear Felix. We will never forget you. Misty and her friends held up their glittering crystals in farewell, showering sparks of light all around them. Then they put the precious crystals carefully away and set out for the Coral Kingdom. What will happen to the mermaids on the next part of their journey? And will they get home in time with the crystals? We're going to have to find out in the next book. But that's the end of this book. And, there's little pictures here of the different mermaids of the sea. There are 6 mermaids. They're sisters of the sea. This is Misty. It says, Misty has flowing blonde hair and a shimmering pink tail. Misty is a really determined and brave mermaid. This is Ellie. Ellie is very caring and loves seabirds. She has long, wavy, dark hair, and a glittering purple tail. Sophie has funky blue hair and a blazing bright orange tail, which helps her to swim super fast. Holly. Holly has sweet, short black hair and a dazzling yellow tail. Holly is very thoughtful and clever. And this is Scarlet. She's got the long, thick hair. Scarlet has fabulous, thick, dark hair and a gleaming red tail. She can be a bit bossy and headstrong sometimes. Okay, so that's 5 of the 6 mermaids. Which one haven't we described yet? That's right, Lucy. Okay, Lucy, this Lucy, not our Lucy, this Lucy has fiery red hair and an emerald green tail. But don't let that fool you. She is really quite shy. Nah, that's not our Lucy. Our Lucy's not shy. Anyway, that is the end of this book, and we're going to read another one sometime. This is another mermaid book. It's called Sophie Makes a Splash. Sophie. Let's see who Sophie is again. Sophie, and then I'll Sophie. So Sophie has funky fair hair. That means kind of blondish hair, and a blazing bright orange tail, which helps her to swim super fast swimming. Okay, boy, I like that book. I'm not sure I should have read the whole thing because it's a long book, but I wanted to get to the end. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye, girls.